all being here today. I was really honored to be asked by Kristen, let me see, sometime in 2020, to be part of the Riverbend Speaker Series. And originally that was to be in person, and unfortunately we can't be together today. However, thanks to the wonders of Zoom, we can all connect this way. In all honesty, I could really talk about natural health for days. Today's just the beginning. I like to call this kind of nutrition, holistic nutrition 101. This is the beginning. This is some basics. I'd like to leave you today with some tips, some guidance. Whether you're just curious or you've already started a holistic journey yourself, this is the beginning of the conversation. So I'm going to be doing a slideshow as we go along. And as Kristen said, feel free to shoot off some questions. I did take the questions that were submitted prior to tonight and kind of wove those into the end of the presentation. And I'll be glad to kind of answer what I can at the end. So as I said, my name is, or as Kristen has said, my name is Karri. I'm a registered holistic nutritionist, or you'll hear me refer to myself as an RHN, here in London, Ontario. And I'm located tonight within the Well Company, which I am part owner of at 16 Wellington Road, Wellington and Grand Ave. And that is a wellness space that we've just opened in London, Ontario. My intro to holistic health really began in 2015. So I still feel like a newbie some days. I guess I'm going on 6 years that I've been involved in this capacity, but this really is something that I almost fell into. In 2015, I was sick and I was diagnosed with some illnesses, and I wasn't getting the answers that I needed through traditional medicine. I had worked a career in mental health and addictions, and quite frankly, I was burnt out. My body had taken the toll from this, and I needed support. It led me really to seeking the addition of holistic care into my health regime, combined with Western medicine and my health and recovery. And it also landed me back to school to become a registered holistic nutritionist. So RHNs are a little bit different than a registered dietitian. I get this question a lot, especially with clients that are reaching out to seek support. The easiest way for me to explain it is I am to the naturopathic doctor what a registered dietitian is to a medical doctor. My role is really to look at things through a holistic lens, and my starting point is always nutrition. So today is all about holistic and natural health. Sorry, tonight, I guess we are now, is a topic near and dear to my heart. The definition of holistic is characterized by comprehension of the parts of something as intimately interconnected and explicable only by reference to the whole. A whole lot of words there, but really it comes down to exactly what holistic health is the approach we look at is the whole person. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So a little bit of an agenda, although I'm sure we'll veer off to different paths as I usually do, but tonight's focus is going to be about what is holistic health, talking about nutrition from a holistic lens. Inflammation is a hot topic and something I really want to talk about today because in my practice, I see so much of it. We are a society that's systemically inflamed. I want to talk about acid and alkaline balance, also kind of goes along with inflammation. We're going to talk about food and mood and the ever so popular topic, gut health, cellular and immune health, some talk about detoxification pathways, my anti-diet or non-diet approach to health, looking at holistic health as the whole body approach, and answers to your submitted questions. So what is a holistic nutritionist? There's a long statement on the screen about, from my school, the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. But to really put it simply, we help educate others on the benefits of natural nutrition. What do I see in my practice? Everything. I think in the last year, and perhaps this is because of what our world has been dealing with, I think people's minds are starting to really open up to what was known as an alternative health. We're really opening our eyes. So I'm seeing everything: digestive issues, sleep, allergies, stress, disordered eating, joint pain, low energy, hormonal imbalances, skin issues. The list really goes on and on. And what is holistic and natural health? Again, a whole bunch of words on the screen there is a statement from my school about what holistic health is. It's really gaining in popularity. As I just said, it's no longer seen so much as alternative. It's a natural approach to supporting your body. It takes us back to the basics, gets us connected back to our body, seeking the answers from within. We're working towards the goal always is getting our body into homeostasis, or what is known as a state of balance. So this quote on the screen, the greatest medicine of all is teaching people how not to need it, really sums up my role as a holistic nutritionist. Let me say this though, I truly believe there is a place for both Western and Eastern or alternative medicine. We need them both. What holistic health offers and why I believe so wholeheartedly in it is it offers prevention. The way that I like to talk to people about this is if we don't listen to our body, if we listen to our body whisper, we don't have to hear it scream. When we start to really get connected to our body on a holistic level, we can tell when things are out of balance. We take care of those things before they turn into bigger problems. Therefore, hopefully alleviating or minimizing the need for medicine. So holistic health is based in treating the cause, not the symptoms. This one was interesting for me to really wrap my head around when I dove into holistic health. I was so used to going to the doctor and dealing with the symptoms. You know, they ask you what brings you to the office today, you list your symptoms, they deal with the symptoms. My first appointment with a naturopath lasted probably well over an hour. I don't think I'd ever even spent that much time with any specialist during, kind of my health and illness journey. And I was shocked at the questions they were asking. They were asking me questions about my whole life and my digestion. They were talking about my mother's digestion when I was in utero, questions I had never, ever been asked. Holistic health is really different than Western medicine. It's looking at where did this start. We're not looking for Band-Aid solutions. We're looking to get to the root of what's going on in the body. We're trying to make interconnections and finding the imbalances. And that's something that I really do in my practice with nutrition. When people present to my office, they've usually got some symptomology, things that are going on in the body. And generally I can make interconnections and see what's happening and then trying to help give them some solutions through the use of food. So where do we start? Well, as a nutritionist, I'm sure you can guess my first plan of attack is nutrition. What is happening on your plate? What's happening on everyone's plate? Part of an assessment with me is talking about what are you eating? What are you not eating? A healthy outside really begins within, and there's a lot to be said about the food, that we're putting into our body and the terrain within, and I'm going to talk a lot about that today. So let's dive in. Some of this is going to be repetition for you. I don't know. Everybody's going to be coming at this from a different kind of baseline of what their knowledge is and where they're getting started from. So if it's a repetition, I apologize, but it's always good too to get a different approach or feedback on this. So let's start with whole foods. You probably heard this one a lot. Kristen really nailed it too at the beginning of this by saying, there is so much information out there. It changes literally by, I feel, the minute. Sometimes people that do proclaim to be experts, there's a lot of press about who is qualified to talk about nutrition. Registered dietitians go to school, they do their undergrad, they do an internship. Holistic nutritionists do their schooling as well. Anyone technically can call themselves a nutritionist, which is something that I've learned along the way, or a nutrition coach, that sort of thing. But really this holistic nutritionist, as well as an education that we've gone to school to get to allow us to be able to speak on nutrition from a holistic lens. So we're not using Canada's food guide, not to get into the differences there, but we're really talking about food at the holistic level. I like to start with everyone with whole foods. The easiest way to describe this is when you go into the grocery store, the more shopping that you do on the outside of the grocery store, the better. And if you're at the market, well, that looks a little different, of course, but there's lots of whole foods that you can find there. Whole foods are foods that are coming not from the box. They are unprocessed. They're grown from the earth. They require us to prepare them. They are not simple foods that we simply buy in a package and prepare. The more variety to the colors on your plate, the better. You could say eat the rainbow is what some people would describe that as. So on the screen there, you can see a whole bunch of whole foods. Some of my favorites there. That salmon looks delicious. High quality foods, also so necessary. I'm going to talk a bit today about organic and GMO versus non-GMO, but this is 8 kinds of high quality foods. So they're grown without the use of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. When I first found out about GMOs, which I'll talk about a little bit later, I was shocked. I had no idea that some of our food was being mechanically created. In fact, some days I still kind of shake my head that this sort of thing is going on. And on top of that, then are being sprayed with pesticides and fertilizers. We want to try and avoid that. A lot of these are they're hormonal disruptors in the body, and hormones are a whole conversation on their own, but definitely can have a disrupting factor to what's going on in our body. We want to look for organic foods that are not genetically modified. I'm going to talk a little bit more about organic because organic is not always necessary, but there's certain times when we recommend it more than others. We're looking for food that contains no added growth hormones, antibiotics, or other drugs. So a lot of people will seek animal proteins that are grass-fed, eggs that are free range, that sort of thing. So we're looking to have food that is more naturally produced. We don't want to look for artificial ingredients and preservatives. There were a lot of questions about aspartame and that sort of thing, and I'll get into talking about that later. So again, if we're shopping on the outside of the grocery store, just like that picture shows you, all of those whole foods is really what we want to aim for. We want to aim for fresh food too. You know, I could get into talking about bacteria, and we're going to talk about that with gut health, but the longer that food sits in the fridge, bacteria starts to grow on it. I had a student living with our family last year who came from Spain, and I've taken international students for many years of my life, and it's so interesting to hear them talk about their grocery shopping. They go grocery shopping daily, every other day, multiple times a week to the market, to the outdoor air markets, and they buy fresh food. Our North American society is a little bit different from that. And wow, was that ever a shock for a lot of students when they would come and see how different our grocery shopping is and different the types of food that we're bringing to our homes. So fresh is always best. We're looking for food that didn't come from a factory farm. We're looking for food grown with the laws of nature in mind. So again, free range, so animals that are grazing and eating grass, what they were naturally meant to, and not necessarily in the confines of a coop or a manufactured kind of factory setting. We want to look for food grown in a sustainable way as well. This is something that I also found really interesting in school, is a lot of our nutrients that were once involved in our soils are no longer there. And we could go into a deep rabbit hole talking about pesticides and fertilizers, but it's really impacted our soil. So these are 2 symbols that you want to look for when you're doing your grocery shopping. The left-hand side is the Canada Organic symbol, and the right side is the non-GMO verified. So this is really important when we are going to talk on the next slide, I believe, about the products that we want to have purchased as organic and also the non-GMO. Sometimes you're going to see products that will have both of these on them or one or the other. So a GMO is really a genetically modified organism. Basically, it's creating food. Seeds are sometimes grown from a genetically modified seed, like they're mechanically put together. So this to me was my aha moment, was diving into some documentaries when I started into this holistic path, was even though I had purchased food that was organic, if it was grown from a GMO seed, at that point, it really didn't matter because it had already been genetically modified. Organic, again, not always needed. We'll talk about that. But a good rule of thumb is if we're eating the skin, we should aim for organic. And again, organic does not always equal non-GMO. So if you haven't heard these words before, the dirty dozen or the clean 15, this is a good rule of thumb for what to buy in organic versus non-organic. So your dirty dozen, or your 12 that you really want to look at buying in an organic state if possible. We have organic qualified farms in and around London. and markets that you can purchase these items from. These are foods that you're going to be eating the skin of, or have more probability that they've been sprayed with fertilizers and pesticides. And your clean 15 are the foods that you don't need to worry quite as much about. So for example, an avocado, we're going to cut into that rind or that shell of the avocado. We're not going to consume it. And I think bananas should be on that one as well. If they're not there, same sort of idea. We're not going to be consuming that banana peel. So again, EWG is a website that you can check out and always see what their latest stats are on that. A reminder again, I think I've said this a few times now, but organic does not equal non-GMO. So soy is one that comes up a lot in practice with questions, is we may have purchased organic soy, but it may have been grown from a genetically modified seed. So in the case of something like soy, I recommend search for that organic non-GMO, especially as women, soy can be a hormone disruptor. So we do not want to be adding in a GMO seed soy. How else can we support ourselves with holistic nutrition? Herbs. Herbs have been around since the beginning of time. I remember my grandmother actually going out to the yard as a child and bringing things in and either putting them on wounds or putting them in the mortar and pestle and doing things with them. And I, at that point in time, had no idea what she was doing, or making a tea out of mint leaves. And there's so much help to be found in herbs. I am not a herbalist. They actually teach us zero about herbs in school, which is disheartening. All of my knowledge has been kind of post-education that I've done myself. But a great easy way to get started is to start adding herbs into your cooking, whether it's, you know, you're making a sauce and adding your own basil or whatever it is. If you're growing your herbs at home, is always a good way to do that too. Or teas. Teas are an excellent way to add herbs into your lifestyle. There's a ton of different teas out there. I just think off the top of my head, a lot of people are using them for liver support, such as dandelion, milk thistle, that sort of thing. I'm going to head now into inflammation. So this, as I said in the intro, is a bit of a hot topic and an important topic, I think, because again, systemically, a lot of us are walking around in inflamed beings, which is not good for anyone to be in their optimal state of health. So inflammation is actually your body's natural response to protect you from harm. There are two types of inflammation, acute and chronic. So acute is when you hurt yourself, your grandkids hurt themselves, your husband, your wife hurt themselves, right? They'll say they cut themselves. Let's say unfortunately you got injured on the golf course and you had to take care of that. There might be some swelling, there might be some redness. This is essential inflammation. These are white blood cells racing to the site of harm to try and protect the area. That is inflammation that our body needs to go through. The difference in more of the problematic inflammation that we see is the chronic. So long-term inflammation in the body is several months to several years or longer. This means that your body's been in an inflammatory response for a really long time. So that means the body may have perceived there was harm and it needed to race those white blood cells to get there. Perhaps there wasn't any harm, perhaps there was something else going on in the body, and that body stays in that inflammatory response. You see this come up a lot with autoimmune disorders. So signs of chronic inflammation, there are really so many, but a fewer fever, rashes. Some people will complain of abdominal pain. Gut inflammation is something that I see a ton. Joint pain, that sort of thing. Chronic inflammation can be linked to, like I said, autoimmune, cancer, heart disease, arthritis, type 2 diabetes, and Alzheimer's. Inflammation is something that we really want to try and get control of as soon as we can. How do we do that? Well, first I'm going to tell you a few ways of how this can show up in the body. So inflammation, as it shows up at the top there, can be toxins, trauma, infection going on in the body. How does that show up? Digestively is a big one. As I mentioned, our gut, inflammation in our gut is really problematic. We can be resistant to weight loss. We can be dizzy, brain fog, fatigue, headaches, disruption to our hormones, mood changes, temperature dysregulation, muscle and joint pain. Inflammation can really show up in a lot of different ways. So what can we do about that? Food is going to be my first go-to. So here is a list of some anti-inflammatory foods. Really important to note here that the foods that we choose to put into our body can really determine how the terrain in our body is going to be. When we choose more anti-inflammatory and more alkaline foods, like I'm going to talk about in a second, that's going to affect our insides and balancing that out. One of the biggest ones I like to use, and I don't know if it's on this slide or not, is turmeric. It comes up a lot. It is a natural anti-inflammatory that we can add into our body. Another really important one is our omega-3s, fatty fish, flaxseed. These fatty acids help reduce our triglycerides, which in turn help reduce blood pressure and lower the risk of any heart problems. If you don't like fish, which usually quite a few people that will put their hands up in person for that one, fish oil supplements offer the same powerful protection. So this is something that you want to be talking to your nutritionist, your dietitian, your naturopath, perhaps your medical doctor too, if they are kind of well-versed in that sort of thing, and start talking to them about how you can incorporate some of those things. Fibrous foods full of fiber are also going to be really important because they help us to eliminate. We need to be going to the bathroom every day. I'm going to talk about detox pathways in a second, but fiber really important. So let's talk about alkalinity. So we have this gal here. She's ready to hit the greens, just like I'm sure you guys all are too. Likely your favorite type of greens, but I'm going to talk about a different type of grain in a second. The standard North American diet consists of processed, refined, artificial, and altered foods. Unfortunately, as a society, we are eating like this. The foods that we're exposed to are fast foods. These are the type of foods that a large number of our population are consuming. And like I said about the student I had from Spain, very shocked to see that we are a society that cooks more so from boxes than we do from natural products. This type of diet or way of eating doesn't lead to a balanced pH in our body. Disease breeds in an acidic environment. The more alkaline we can get, the better. We want to aim for about 80% alkaline foods and 20% acidic. So on the next slide, you'll see there's a whole bunch of greens here, different greens than you guys are used to or looking forward to getting back onto soon. There's a whole lot of green here. The greener, the better. These foods help to alkalize our gut. So there's lots of good options there. Garlic, also a great option. I just see a giant salad right now when I look at all of this. So another option, and something that I talk to people about in practice too, is to add some chlorophyll to your water each day. That can be found at your local health food store. There's wheatgrass on the screen there too, and that's something that you could add into a smoothie or a shake. So really important to be looking at those anti-inflammatory and alkaline foods. I'm going to switch gears a bit here and talk about gut health. Gut health is a really, really popular topic, and quite honestly, it could be its own session. I've actually done quite a few gut health sessions on their own. The gut microbiome has received a lot of press in the last while. The science between the connection from our gut to our brain is constantly expanding. Some are even calling our gut our second brain. So the more care and concern that we take to our gut, the better. This is something that in all factuality is so, I just am so impressed with the amount that people are talking about gut health now. If I think back to even my childhood, nobody really talked about that. I think about my own gut and digestive stuff that I dealt with as a child, and nobody ever suggested probiotics. I don't even know if they were around then, quite possibly, but nobody was having those sorts of conversations. It was, I think at best, maybe have a peppermint tea or something like that. So we've come a long way when we're talking about gut health. There's a diagram here of our brain and our gut bacteria. The state of our gut microbiome affects our whole body's health. In order to have the most optimal gut health, we do need a balance between the good and bad bacteria. So here's where I get a lot of questions with people in practice is, not fully understanding that there needs to be a balance. Our body is made up of bacteria in order to, you know, any human has bacteria in the body, and we actually do need that bacteria. But what happens is if the bad outweighs the good, that's where we run into problems. So you'll hear me talk about probiotics or probiotic and prebiotic foods. We want to try and balance that out so that our gut kind of takes over the bad, so that there's more of a balance there. So here's some facts about gut health. And again, we're talking about gut connected to brain health, really, really important in order to be thriving and our brain to be at its optimal health and our mood, we need to be taking care of the gut. It's estimated that over 90% of serotonin is built in our gut. Serotonin being one of our happy mood transmitters that we need. Our body actually creates this. A lot of people take what's called SSRIs or antidepressants. Certain antidepressants are SSRIs. And that's actually trying to put the serotonin back into the body is the way that I understand it. But in my world, nothing wrong with SSRIs. People take them. And some people that are on SSRIs will even come to me and say, can I get some, should I be working on probiotics and gut health? Absolutely. Gut health is crucial. Some people even find that the more that they've worked on their gut health, the more that their mood has improved. And that statistic really shows the importance of that. Our North American standard diet has contributed to poor gut health. 100%. Again, to go back to a different, more Mediterranean style, even more fresh, whole foods. They're not eating I like to call them like white foods, white bread, rice. All of these processed foods has really, really contributed to our gut not being in the best shape that it can. Pharmaceuticals and over-the-counter medications can certainly affect gut quality. Not to say that people shouldn't take them. If that's what they're prescribed, that's what they need to be doing. Over-the-counter medications as well. A lot of people rely on the use of Advil or anti-inflammatories, that sort of thing. And what I always recommend in practice is then, if that's the case and that person needs that, then let's get some probiotics in to try and repopulate or re-inoculate that good quality bacteria in the gut. Antibiotics destroy all gut bacteria, even the good guys, 100%. So one of the first questions that I ask in a nutrition assessment is, have you been on antibiotics in the past? Have you been on antibiotics frequently? Because if that person has, we really need to introduce more of the good guys, more of the probiotics to get that gut back in good shape. When an antibiotic is taken, and I think we've all probably needed them at some point in our lives, it really does destroy all of it. So we need to get back to getting the balance. What I generally recommend in practice is for people to, if you're taking an antibiotic as prescribed by your medical care team, is to stop your probiotic and generally get back onto the probiotic after your antibiotics are done. That way it's not just kind of battling each other out. So wait till the antibiotic is done and then we'll re-inoculate. And generally most naturopathic doctors that I've worked with will say that we need to up the dosage of what the probiotic is. So again, you want to be talking to your naturopath if that's the case about how much bacteria and what certain strain should you be taking. Good bacteria in the gut provides a strong barrier and protects from inflammation. So a good way to look at it is our gut in its best state should be like this, should be cohesive. There should be no gaps in the lining. What happens with the North American standard diet or way of eating, and the more toxins that we're exposed to, the more bad bacteria that takes over, we actually start to get what looks like this, like perforations almost in the gut lining. And you'll hear me talk about leaky gut in a second. And what happens is bacteria gets in through those little pockets into our bloodstream. Can really show up in cases like allergies, skin problems, candida, and again, leaky gut is where that all starts. So some signs that your gut may be out of balance include digestive symptoms, lots of flatulence, burping, leaky gut, which you'd need to talk to a practitioner about, and candida. Those sorts of things will tell you that your gut could probably use some TLC. And very, very common, probably one of the most common reasons that I see somebody in my office would be for gut health. So just a cute little comic here. The brain telling the tummy, I don't care if you're not hungry. I need my freaking serotonin. So that brain knows that that serotonin is coming from that tummy. So we want to get our gut health in check. That's number one. First thing that we need to do to really make sure that we can create that serotonin. So research shows us that gut bacteria communicates and influences how our brain works. An imbalance in that bacteria, like I just talked about, can be associated with ADHD, autism, obsessive compulsive disorder, mood swings, memory and cognition, anxiety, depression, insomnia, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. This was taken from the book Three Brains, which was written by Dr. Karen Jensen, who's a naturopathic doctor. Really interesting book about the connection between gut and brain health. So what do we see in terms of mood connected to food? Sometimes it will show up like this. If we're dealing with somebody that's really irritable and anxious, they could be over caffeinating. They could be relying too much on caffeine products to really, kind of get them through their day. People that I see that get that dip kind of at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe going to caffeine to kind of give them the boost instead of looking at what's going on with their gut and possibly their adrenal glands as well. Mood swings have a lot to do with refined sugar. I see this in kids a lot, right? They're eating a lot of candies, a lot of cookies, pop. Pop is something that personally I didn't grow up with a lot in my home. I don't know if soda pop just wasn't as popular then, or if my parents just really didn't bring it into the house. But from what I see nowadays is people are drinking soda pop a lot, which is all mostly refined sugar. If their mood is low, they could be eating a fatty, high calorie food like junk food, fast food. Again, we're a society that really relies on that quick and easy access to food that's been prepared by someone else. If somebody's feeling generally happy, right, they're thriving, they're probably eating a lot of nuts and seeds, possibly tofu, lentils, beans, eggs, chicken, fish. They're getting those omega-3s, those fatty acids. If they're emotionally balanced, they're less moody. Again, fish, food rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids like walnuts and almonds. Again, those omegas are really, really important. And feeling more alert and active, some lean meat, some lamb, some soy, some eggs, some chickpeas. These are all foods that can help really stabilize our mood. So in practice, what I really talk to people about is, as I just said, really incorporate those omega-3 fatty acids. You can see some fish up there. Flaxseed is a good one. Flaxseed best in its ground state. I like to encourage people to take the whole seed. Bulk barn's even a great place to get flaxseed. Grind that up. You can put that on salads. You can put that in smoothies and shakes, and it's really pretty much tasteless. Green leafy vegetables are always a good one. Hemp hearts, chia seeds, good quality protein sources, your complex carbs, your pro and prebiotic foods. So probiotic foods, some yogurt, some kefir, some kimchi, your fermented foods. Prebiotic foods, garlic and onions are great options. Chicory root, raw dandelion greens. The less processed and the less refined, the better. I know I keep saying this, but I really mean it. The more we shop on the outside of the grocery store, the better. Reducing those refined sugars, and we're going to talk about sugars and sweeteners in a few minutes too, but really trying to minimize how much we're having those.
The red meat.
So I want to talk about supporting our cellular and immune health for a few minutes. Immune health has been a really hot topic this last year, and I want to just remind everybody that we have the ability to nourish ourselves and our immune system to do the best that we can to really have our terrain prepared for whatever exposures to things that are going to happen. Not to say it's always going to prevent it, but we can certainly do our best to work on our immune health. So how do we get started? Immune boosting foods. Generally at the start, before winter really gets going, I know in our house, we tend to get going with elderberry, always having garlic. But these are some immune boosting foods that you can really work into having into your home. Bone broth is a great one, whether you're making it yourself or purchasing that. Great option. Turmeric also here as well. So the more that we can boost our immune system, the more alkaline we can eat and the less inflammation in our terrain, the better. There's also supplementation to support immune health as well. And I do always preface this with, talk to your medical doctor, your naturopathic doctor. As holistic nutritionists, I can't dose individuals, but I can certainly make recommendations on supplements that can support them. Vitamin D, number one for the winter months. In Canada, I think somebody here is from Florida. I think I heard Kristen say that. They're not dealing with this right now, but the rest of us that are here in dark London, although it was nice the last couple of days, the sunshine was out. Our sun has to hit a certain UV for us to be able to take in that vitamin D. So even today on a sunny day like it was, likely our UV wasn't high enough. I don't know the number off the top of my head. I'd have to look into that one, but we're not getting there. So we need to be dosing with vitamin D. A couple of options there to get your vitamin D numbers run. I know that's something I had myself done this winter. I hadn't had it done before. It was quite surprising to see. So naturopath will work with you on kind of changing your dosing to make sure you're getting up to optimal levels. The other thing a naturopath can offer here is vitamin D kind of injections so that you can get that quick, very bioabsorbable vitamin D right into you, depending on how low your levels were. Vitamin C, always a great option, or up your vitamin C foods. Zinc, echinacea, quercetin, glutathione, antioxidants, mushrooms, herbal remedies, and as I said, IV therapy through a naturopathic doctor. So that one would be a little bit different than the vitamin D, but that's going into the naturopath and having those IVs done of nutrients. I know glutathione is a big one in the naturopath's office too, really supporting that liver. So lots we can do supplement-wise to support our immune health. I think it's also important when we're talking about immune health that we're talking about cellular health. So you can see some cells on the screen there. We've got a happy guy. We've got, looks like a little bit of an aggravator, and then another happy guy that looks like he's over in Florida himself on the end. What I see frequently in my practice is sluggish cells that are usually paired with an individual that's lacking energy. Looking at our cells can tell us a lot about what's going on in the body. If they're all congested and they're not moving around and bouncing around, that person is likely pretty congested and not thriving the best that they could. Some facts about cellular health are red blood cells regenerate every 120 days. So that gives us a good amount of time to really work on our cellular health in the time for our next production of cells. Research shows that damage caused by free radicals, which are unstable atoms that can damage our cells, causing illness and aging. Oxidization and chronic inflammation, they cause our cells to show signs of stress and aging. This breaks down our cells over time. As the body ages, it really loses its ability to fight the effects of free radicals. The result is more free radicals, more oxidative stress, more damage, which leads to degenerative processes as well as normal aging. Although our body does create free radicals inside, we accelerate their production by our exposure to toxins, chemicals, such as pesticides and air pollution, smoking, alcohol, fried foods. In my practice, I take a look at cells under the microscope through the use of nutritional microscopy using live cell analysis. And that's how I get a good look at what's going on in the cells. So it's different than lab work that gets sent off by the doctor or the naturopath to get reviewed. This is actually your cells right on the screen in front of you to see what's happening with them. So like I said, antioxidants are one way that we can support. We can reduce our exposure to toxins and pollutants. We can avoid the standard North American diet foods. We can add in things such as vitamin C and E and glutathione and vitamin A and foods that are rich in antioxidants, like garlic, broccoli, berries, citrus fruit, dark chocolate, and carrots. I know I'm starting to run out of time here, which does not surprise me. Detoxification pathways, I'm going to talk a little bit here about. Every talk I've ever done, I always get asked about detoxes. I'm going to save you the purchase of the next detox tea, and I'm going to tell you this. If our cells are thriving and our body is in balance, it will do its own detoxification naturally. I'm not saying that a detox isn't always necessary, but you'd want to seek the support of a practitioner to really help you through that. Ways that our body's detoxing is our skin. Our skin is our largest organ. How do we support it? We stay hydrated. Rule of thumb, half your body weight in pounds to ounces of water, of pure filtered water daily. We want to move our body. We want to support our lymphatic system. Again, another topic I could do totally on its own. Dry skin brushing is a good one, just to kind of get that lymphatic system moving. It's doing the job of getting rid of the toxins from the body. Infrared saunas and red light therapies become really popular. I've noticed people, like to do that to get that detox happening. We also want to reduce toxins on the skin, especially for women when I'm talking about beauty products, makeup, soaps, bath lotions, that sort of thing. We want to try and get as natural as we can. All of those chemicals that are created in these products, we're putting onto our skin, and our skin is then in turn absorbing them. We want to work towards natural cleaning products in face and beauty. Our lungs, another big one. We want to reduce our exposure to toxins here, our pollution, and anyone that's smoking, of course, we want to try and mitigate our risk that way. The liver is our most important and our main filtering organ. When it comes to detox, a lot of things can really bog the liver down. And when I was talking to my husband about my presentation, when I went through this list, he basically said all the good things, Karri, is what you're telling people not to do. What I'm saying is we want to minimize our risk. So alcohol, tobacco, intoxicants, processed refined foods, sugar, ibuprofen, Tylenol, prescriptions, over-the-counter meds, constipating foods, spicy foods, fried foods, margarine, shortening, all of that stuff just bogs our liver down, and then it has to do the work to really get those toxins out of the body. Overeating or eating past fullness is actually really hard on our liver too, because we're putting a lot of pressure on it. So we want to try and eat to fullness and not past. I'll talk a little bit about that if I have time. How do we reduce our exposure? So we reduce our exposure to these. We can add in lemon juice as a light support for the liver. I'll talk about that in a bit too. Milk thistle tea or supplementation or dandelion tea. Our kidneys also do a lot of work for us. Again, stay hydrated. That's one of the best ways we can support our kidneys, and herbs can also be used with the support of a herbalist, naturopath, nutritionist, dietitian. Our colon daily elimination is key here. If you aren't going to the bathroom at least once a day, definitely time to reach out to a practitioner to support you that way. It's really important that we're going to the bathroom, because that is our detoxification happening right there. Fibrous foods, upping those will really help in keeping our gut bacteria in balance. Sometimes I find it really funny when I have a client who has just started probiotics and has never used anything like that before and is really working on their gut health, and they start going to the bathroom. A happy person is somebody that's going to the bathroom every day that hasn't been going. So I love to get those phone calls. For any significant detox, you really want to seek the support of a naturopathic doctor, holistic nutritionist, a practitioner to really help you with that. So my approach, and I know we're getting short on time, so I probably won't go too much into this today, but my approach really is non-diet focused. What I see is people in practice that are taking things away. What I want to talk about is inclusion versus restriction. We should only be taking foods away based on medical need, allergy, sensitivity, ethical reasons. Less is not more or better. We should be adding versus removing. We want to learn to eat again, connected to our gut. We've become a society that eats, and I'm sorry, women, but I'm calling us out basically from the neck up with all the food rules and the dieting and all this news that we've been told about what's good and what's bad. We want to reconnect back to the body, eat from hunger and stop when we're full. Long-term restriction leads to metabolic problems and other problems within the body. And 95% of people who lose weight on a diet regain it. Diets don't work. There's a lot of myths about there too, about what's good and what's bad. We need to include fats. Fats are good, the right kind of fats. They're good for the brain, they're good for our overall health. And poor carbohydrates, they get such a bad rap, but our brain actually needs them for glucose. And I know there's probably people out there that are on a lower carbohydrate way of living. We just want to make sure that we are incorporating some to make sure that our brain is getting what it needs. So some tips here: you can work on your health without a focus on size. Let's work on getting you to your optimal health without the number on the scale that it needs to be attached to. Bodies change, and as we age, they shift. We're not going to get that 18-year-old body back anymore, and we need to start working on what optimal health is best at the state that we're at now. Diets are cookie cutter programs, not usually individualized. Diets has made us fear certain foods, carbohydrates. Lose that good versus bad mentality. Figure out what foods make you feel good. Start nourishing your body and helping bring it back into balance. So as a holistic practitioner, we really work on mind, body, and soul, a whole body approach. There's a lot to be said about holistic health. It encompasses our mind, body, and spirit. It's valuing all of our needs is important and working towards the ultimate goal of optimal health. So I liked this quote. It really says exactly what holistic health is. It's a state of complete harmony of the body, mind, and spirit. So tips to help get you there. Again, I could probably talk an hour about stress and the importance of keeping our stress reduced. It is a factor in so much illness. We are a society that is go, go, go. And hopefully I'm talking to our retirement community. So I'm hoping and hopeful for my own future that stress starts to reduce. But let's face it, we're always getting stressed no matter where we're at in our life. And it's really about how we manage that stress. Meditation's really successful for a lot of people. Guided meditation. Meditation doesn't need to be perfect. I have yet to see anybody that can completely clear their mind and meditate, but getting those deep cleansing breaths, those big belly breaths, movement's really important. Moving your body in a way that feels good for you. The importance of sleep. I know I'm all over the place with this slide, but sleep is really important. We want to make sure that we're getting that restful REM sleep. That's something else you could talk to a holistic practitioner about too, is to support your sleep. We want to practice mindfulness and mindful eating. Be present when we're eating. Activate those senses, really be there. Keep your blood sugar stable, eat regularly throughout the day. Eating to a level of fullness so that you're satiated for longer periods of time. Exercise regularly, give Kristen a call, get in there and get lifting some weights, and hopefully you can get back into your gym soon, and stay hydrated as well. Really, really important stuff. So that leads me to the questions that were submitted. So I'm going to go through those. So I've had a couple about sugar. So this one is one source of sugar better than the other? Is honey or maple sugar less harmful? If you're going to use sugar, are artificial sweeteners like stevia preferable to honey, maple syrup, etc.? I want to say this. I will start with, let's avoid aspartame. If there's anything I could leave you with today to be the one that you avoid, it's being linked to the potential of health problems after long-term use. I think the research is still mixed on it and there's nothing conclusive, but I'd like to say if it's created chemically, that we can probably find more natural ways. So two of them have been listed here, honey and maple sugar. You want to be looking for a raw honey source and a pure maple sugar source. Choosing natural and less refined is always preferred. Stevia, xylitol, monk fruit are also plant-based type options. Cane and beet sugar, they may not be white refined sugar, but there is some processing in the creation. My honest thoughts to you are choose natural sources. Fruit can also be used to sweeten. And somebody said to me not too long ago, fruit is the candy that nature gave us. So maybe incorporating some of that in as well. Insulin resistance was brought up. This, again, could probably be its own presentation as well. Insulin resistance is when your muscles, body fat, and liver start resisting or ignoring the signal that the hormone insulin is trying to send out, which is to grab the glucose out of the bloodstream and put it in our cells. Glucose, known as blood sugar, is the body's main source of fuel. So some tips here. Start with 2 bites of protein when you're starting your meal, whatever your protein source is on your plate. My encouragement as a holistic nutritionist is make sure protein is a part of every meal or snack because it helps keep you satiated. Having 2 bites of protein really inhibits that release of insulin, and instead you release glucagon. Insulin allows the cells to absorb glucose from the blood, while glucagon triggers the release of stored glucose from the liver. Eat to fullness, eliminating the need to graze and have your blood sugars rise and fall throughout the day. We want to keep those as stable as we can. See your ND or your MD, medical doctor, to have your fasting insulin tested if you're really concerned about possible insulin resistance. Another question about aspartame versus sucralose. I'm going to go back to what I said on the previous slide. I would avoid aspartame. That's my encouragement in practice. I encourage people to seek natural options, but I would always advocate to try and refrain from the aspartame. There's a part here about aspartame tricking your brain into thinking it's getting sugar. I have done some reading about aspartame telling your brain that you're actually hungry, and it has to all do with the chemical compounds of it. So I'm no expert in aspartame by any means, but there's mixed research on it. And in this case, this person is using sucralose instead of aspartame, I think, in the foods that they're using. And I think that that's probably a wiser choice between the two. Again, I always encourage natural as possible, less processed, less refined. How can women taking tamoxifen avoid weight gain? So anytime I have somebody coming in that is taking a prescription medication, a lot of prescription medications can really cause us to retain water or to really alter our appetite and also alter our gut health. So my first frame of thought whenever I get questions like this, what is the status of the terrain within the gut? Prescription medications can alter the state of the gut and the gut lining. So really, I would want to do a full symptomology or assessment and know kind of how that's affecting them. Obviously, they're taking the tamoxifen for a reason, but how can we support the body on this side to help reduce some of that likely inflammation in the gut that the prescription medication is causing? I also want to talk to them about getting more connected with their hunger and fullness cues, because if that medication is causing them to feel like they need to eat more, which is possible, then how can I get them back connected with the body and being able to identify when they're hungry and when they're full? So I think I've made that pretty clear tonight with the importance of gut health and how much it really is interconnected with so many things. Does drinking a lemon juice or apple cider vinegar in water aid in digestion? So I'm going to pull these two apart. Apple cider vinegar, huge believer in that, in terms of having that before a meal, about 20 minutes before a meal, really helps get your stomach acid going to be ready to digest the food that's going to be coming into it. Again, we're a society that we're walking around with not a lot of stomach acids ready to digest the food based on how we've been eating. So I'm a big believer in that. Lemon juice is great as a light cleanse for the liver, something we do not want to be doing every day. But you can do for a period of 30 days and take a break. You can have that first thing in the morning. It also helps break up mucus in the body. So if I see somebody in that struggles with sinus problems or a lot of mucus, we can work at adding some lemon juice in to really help them. Speaking of digestion, one thing I want to add is anyone that's had their gallbladder removed, I see a lot of that in practice. It's highly recommended to introduce a digestive enzyme because they're missing a major piece of their digestion process. So see your naturopath or medical doctor or holistic nutritionist to really talk about what you can do to support with a digestive enzyme. Lectins, what are they? How would you explain as we keep hearing about them? They have been getting a lot of press, I find, quite lately. So lectins are a family of proteins found in almost all foods, especially legumes and grains. The highest amounts are found in legumes and grains. So things like red kidney beans, wheat, even tomatoes, peanuts, and potatoes, they all have high lectins in them. As humans, we can have problems digesting lectins. In fact, we may be highly resistant to them and not have the proper digestive enzymes in our body to have them pass through the stomach. However, cooking helps reduce the lectins in the food. So I don't think anybody would be sitting down and eating raw red kidney beans. I wouldn't think so. But the more that we cook those foods, that can help reduce if our body's having any sort of reaction. The other thing you could do, I want to go back to that for a sec. I don't necessarily think avoid them. Again, do some elimination. If you're ever eliminating a food, do one at a time. Pull that out, see how the body reacts, and add that back in and see how you do with that food. I do have clients that really struggle with peanuts, and that's something that we've had to kind of pull out from their food until they got their gut health back in check so they could add that food back in. And also you could look at a digestive enzyme to support if you're having problems with those foods. Benefits or pros and cons of CBD oil. I can't speak a ton about CBD oil. It's nothing that we are trained in school about. All of my knowledge comes from post kind of school education on my own. I can tell you this, that CBD is getting very known for anti-inflammatory purposes. the way that it interacts with our endocannabinoid system in our body. So that's something for you to kind of research and look into. A lot of people will use topically if they're dealing with inflammation, they will kind of put that on as well. But I'm just no expert in CBD, so I don't want to give you the wrong information. I can tell you though that it doesn't have the same kind of intoxicant effect as THC or cannabis would have. So CBD will not give you that effect, but it is known to have anti-inflammatory properties. Flowers and oils, which ones are best? Well, best rule of thumb here is to avoid, refine, and process in both flowers and oils. So for flowers, some options: coconut, almond, quinoa, buckwheat, rye, whole wheat, if you don't have any sort of sensitivity to any of that. And for oils, extra virgin olive oil, coconut, avocado, flaxseed. We want to avoid trans and saturated, as many saturated fats as we can. Trans, absolutely. How to read food labels simplified. So this one is a bit of a struggle for me because as an anti-diet or non-diet nutritionist, I really encourage people to look at how food makes them feel when they eat it versus counting calories and carbohydrates and all the things that we can look at. The way to look at food is if we increase the amount of foods that have no label at all. So again, going back to that, outside of the grocery store, none of those foods have labels on it. We want to up those foods. If you are in a position where you do need to keep an eye on the labels, take a look at a few things on there. Keep an eye on the fats. You want to make sure that, as this label shows you, there's no trans fats there. We want to watch the sodium. A lot of our processed and prepared foods are really high in sodium, which is really hard for our bodies to take on all of that salt. We need salt, absolutely, good quality salt. But when we're dealing with prepared food, it's generally not good quality salt. Processed foods will have high amounts of sodium in it. Carbohydrates, again, they get a really bad rap. What we want to look for there, when you're looking at the carbohydrates, is you want to make sure that there's also dietary fiber in there. There's a calculation that you can do to kind of find out what the, I forget the wording for it, but taking the carbohydrate and the fiber, and there's a calculation, but we want to make sure that there's fiber in that carbohydrate. Again, your best kind of sources of this are going to be those whole foods that aren't going to have these labels on. We want to avoid the added sugars if possible. You can see this one has added sugars in it. Sugar, alcohols will sometimes be listed. We want to keep it as natural as possible. Protein, keep an eye on that one too. It's a really important macronutrient that we want to make sure that we are getting into our meals because it helps keep us satiated. So this was kind of the end of my spiel. So this is just me, how to connect with me. Kristen can also get you connected with me. What I offer: nutritional assessments, lifestyle analysis, which I talked a little bit about, and nutritional counseling really make up the big pieces of my practice. I also have an anti-inflammatory recipe guide that I can pass on to Kristen, because I think it's helpful to kind of get you going with some anti-inflammatory cooking if this is the first for you, and really start incorporating that into your way of eating. So virtual and in-person options are available now that things are really starting to open up. I noticed that my in-person is getting more popular, but I was able to keep my doors open as I do offer counseling. So that's been great. I'm covered by some benefits, which is also excellent. And I just want to give you a giant thank you, all of you, for coming tonight, for having me. I hope you found this helpful. Again, this is Holistic Nutrition 101. This is just the beginning. There's lots of kind of offshoot conversations that could come from this, but I'm hoping that this gives you a happy, healthy entry into your spring. And Kristen, I don't know if you have anything for me.
Yes, Karri, I sent you just a few questions through chat there that have come through.
All right, let's see if I can figure this out. Chat, all right. Safe amount for zinc or vitamin D. Off the top of my head, vitamin D, the most common kind of dosing that people start with is usually 1,000 IU is what you're going to see on the bottle. That I would always recommend. You can start with 1,000 IU without seeing a practitioner for that one. If you want to go higher than that, naturopaths will dose you higher. I know for myself, I did have to dose higher than 1,000 because my numbers were lower, but safe to start with 1,000 always. Anything or above, I would recommend seeing someone to talk about. Zinc's a good question, and I can't answer that off the top of my head. I could probably look into that one and get back to you. Kristen, I can let you know that one. Zinc's not one that I can have a common dosage in my head for. Is it necessary for herbs and turmeric to be fresh for the full benefit? No, it's not necessary. A lot of times people are doing their herbs from teas, so that's not fresh. You know, obviously that's been dried, and some people will do their own drying of herbs in their house. For turmeric, I'm kind of mixed on that. I personally prefer to get the turmeric root and kind of work with that way, but I also do have ground turmeric in the house too. Any of that, if you can get that into your lifestyle, is beneficial, no matter if it's coming fresh or not. Where can you find pre and probiotics? Your prebiotics are generally in foods, and I mentioned some of those in the slides, garlic and onions being two that come to my head really quickly. You can also supplement prebiotics. There is a pre and probiotic supplement on the market. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but you can sometimes get those together. Your probiotics can be found in foods as well, kefir, yogurt, fermented foods, and probiotics. No matter how many of those foods people are eating, I always recommend supplementation, and there's different strains and there's different amounts of bacteria. So that will really depend on whatever that person is dealing with. Somebody that's just come off of antibiotics, we're going to want to up that amount of probiotics that they're taking.
Okay. All right. I think that was it. Thank you so much. If there's nothing else that anybody else has to ask, we've already, through conversation before, thought of one more topic that we can think of another seminar to do. So we'll definitely have Karri back again. Thank you all for taking time out to join us tonight. And Karri, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to join us here. And it was so nice to see so many of your faces in one way or another. Yep. Thanks for joining us, Karri. And
thank you for having me.
Yes, yes. And if anything comes up, let me know. I've recorded this. I will not be able to download it. This I'll rely on Tara to do, but it will be somewhere in cyberspace, and we'll figure out, and I'll send out Word so you're able to see it again and have it at your fingertips.
Thank you.
Okay, and I've got
Thanks
Karri's
so
Thanks
much.
very much, Kristen.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Thanks, Kristen.
You're
Bye-bye.
welcome. Take care. Yeah. There's everyone. There's Kathy. Kathy is here. We've got another awesome lineup ready to go. Next, right here on CTV.
How do I turn